In the midst of World War II, the Allies had successfully defeated the German army in North Africa.
North Africa was the proving ground for the Allied war effort, going against Hitler's machine.
From here, the Allies planned to launch a second European front.
The question is, where in Southern Europe do we attack?
The Allies have to deceive the Germans of their true invasion plans, as German defenses are too strong.
We're not in the position to match the enemy yet on continental Europe in a conventional military fashion.
Two young British intelligence agents in MI5 proposed one of the most secretive and daring missions of the Second World War.
Espionage was a major part of World War II. The British perfected this to a science.
Those were desperate times, and they called for desperate measures.
If the Allies don't convince the Germans to maximize their defenses in the wrong place, it will be a disaster.
If the Germans figure this out, it is mass casualties for thousands and thousands of Allied soldiers.
It's like a chess game. It's not the person whose queen wins the game, it's using every piece to its best advantage.
Just one wrong move, and this mission would fail, and many lives would be lost. In April 1943, a decomposing body in a Royal Marines uniform is discovered off the coast of Huelva, southern Spain. A black attaché is chained to the body's wrist, containing top-secret documents about an impending Allied invasion.
Everyone knows it's going to happen. Just where's the invasion of Europe going to come from?
But this is no ordinary body lost at sea. This is part of one of the most ambitious missions ever conducted by British intelligence. Operation Mincemeat.
Operation Mincemeat becomes the great Trojan horse of World War II. It's an absolutely essential mission that ends up saving thousands of Allied lives.
Devised and put into motion by Chumley and Ewan Montague, British intelligence agents working for MI5 in London. Their unparalleled attention to detail would be a major catalyst to the Allied victory.
The German war machine was so overwhelming to anyone who witnessed it that the Allies would have to depend on any means that they could to get an advantage over the Germans.
Espionage is a major part of the British war effort. They run a huge disinformation campaign, feeding fake leads about the military plans to the Nazis using double agents.
This is part of the war that we don't talk about very much. We focus on the battles and the invasions, but the war of the mind, we don't talk about. The idea of how do we fool the other side, creating false information that they think they are getting through espionage. So it's the double cross of it.
British intelligence had already cracked the Enigma code that the Germans used to send messages, deciphered by a team based in Bletchley Park, just northwest of London.
Interestingly, Bletchley Park isn't so much a place that respects or promotes military stripes, but much more, in fact, great minds.
Intelligence in this case is meant to give the people on the ground who are running the operation as much forewarning and foreknowledge as possible.
British intelligence uses the intercepted information to tailor upcoming espionage missions, which are discussed in MI5 committees. In 1942, 25-year-old Charles Christopher Chumley is the secretary for the top-secret 20 Committee, the group in charge of overseeing double agents.
And the 20 is this incredibly fascinating interdepartmental committee that is responsible for managing one of the most essential programs of World War II, which is called the Double Cross. And they are responsible for managing at the top level this program that has turned German agents working in the United Kingdom, keeping the Germans totally unaware that they're now working for the Allies.
They meet every Thursday in MI5 offices at 58 James Street in London to discuss the double agent system and explore new deception plans.
Okay, there's a big emphasis from the get-go in British thinking on deceiving the enemy, that this is going to be a long war, it's going to be a war that is going to require thinking out of the box, ungentlemanly warfare, deception, unconventional methods.
So in many ways, it's like a chess game. It's not the person whose queen wins the game, it's using every piece to its best advantage. And the only way you do that in chess is because you get to look down from above and see how all the pieces on both sides are playing to plan ahead. When you can get to that level with your intelligence information in warfare, it provides you with a significant advantage, especially if your opponent doesn't have that same advantage.
Chumley was a flight lieutenant in the Royal Air Force, seconded to the MI5 security service.
He was very short-sighted, so if you'd caught sight of him, very thick spectacles, weirdly shy, almost secretive. He was your quintessential English eccentric. His short-sightedness, a personal tragedy for him, obviously. He wants to be out there in a flying machine, didn't all the boys back in the day? Is actually a great boon, of course, for British intelligence, because instead they acquire his alternative, secretive mind.
At the beginning of the war, Rear Admiral John Godfrey, the Director of Naval Intelligence, circulated the Trout Memo. Although published under Godfrey's name, it bore all the hallmarks of his assistant. His name, Lieutenant Commander Ian Fleming, who would after the war become the famous novelist immortalizing British intelligence operations through the adventures of James Bond. He knows his commander is a keen angler, so he compares the deception of an enemy in wartime to fly fishing.
One of his sort of famous analogies is he says, you know, the fly fisherman must outsmart the trout, outsmart the fish, and makes the point, if you've been fishing in one place, you need to leave it a while because the trout's going to know you're there. Let's strip this back to basic human nature. What can we make the enemy believe?
What the Trout Memo is, it's exploring types of espionage. They developed literally a laundry list of ways of duping the Nazis.
October 31st, 1942, Charles Chumley presents the idea of a Trojan horse to the 20 Committee, a plan to place falsified documents of a highly secret nature in the hands of the enemy using a decoy, a dead body.
There's two aspects to this mission. On the first point, what you need to do is trick the Germans. And the other very important thing is we know that the Germans have been tricked.
This idea that you can plant evidence on a body is totally new. It's actually something that Ian Fleming says can be seen as drastic. But in war, anything is drastic.
Chumley's audacious idea lands on the desk of intelligence officer Ewan Montague. At this time, Montague has been briefed that this plan could be used by the Allies to deceive the Germans in a forthcoming operation in the Mediterranean.
And he was an intellect, he was a judge, he had a keen passion for yachting, which is how he ends up in the sort of volunteer naval division and then is promoted into naval intelligence.
Montague is teamed with Chumley to develop the Trojan horse plan further.
For me, one of the things that I found most interesting was that they were able to sell this, and not to the Germans, but to their own side to move forward with it. I mean, it's a crazy idea.
Holman-Lee and Montague are a really interesting duo because they both love to read spy novels, they both love fiction. This is the opportunity to do something which would only be seen in a novel, and they'll go to tremendous lengths to make this work.
Where Chumley was awkward but charming, Montague was smooth and refined. He was highly organized and attentive to details, the perfect complement to Chumley's unusually imaginative brain. At this time, the British Army is also in the heat of action. Beginning October 23, 1942, the British Army attacks German forces at El Alamein in North Africa.
North Africa was the proving ground for the Allied war effort, going against Hitler's machine. It was a way for Allies to work together in that part of the world in a way they hadn't before.
The British 8th Army under General Bernard Montgomery is pushing for a victory. On November 4th, the Germans suffer a comprehensive defeat, which sparks the Allied invasion of North Africa, Operation Torch.
But very famously, Churchill says, this ain't the end. This isn't the beginning of the end even. This is the end of the beginning. But it's still a pivot point. We've got the upper hand now.
Troops begin to land near Casablanca, Oran, and Algiers, and form a large Allied army.
After losing North Africa, the Germans become highly aware that the invasion may come from North Africa to one of two locations. It's either going to be Italy or it's going to be Greece.
For the Allies, the best option is Sicily, the island situated just off the coast of Italy, which will give them a stepping stone into mainland Europe. Even Churchill remarked, "Anybody but a damn fool would know it was Sicily." In January of 1943, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill meet in the Anfa Hotel in Casablanca, French Morocco, to plan the next phase of the Allied attacks in World War II.
At the Casablanca conference, Franklin Roosevelt and Churchill start planning beyond North Africa. What's next? The question is, where in Southern Europe do we attack? Churchill and Roosevelt are working on a southern invasion of Europe, and the Allies want to hit Sicily. They're worried about casualties, so Operation Mincemeat is designed to make the Germans think that we're not going to attack in Sicily. The Allies are going to attack somewhere else. In this particular case, Greece.
The key to success to capturing Sicily is to convince the Germans that Greece is the intended target, hoping that troop numbers are then reduced on the island.
There is this kind of recognition in mid-1942 that we're not fighting the war in the same committed way that our enemy is. By this stage, by 1942-43, it's about winning. We're not in the position to match the enemy yet on continental Europe in a conventional military fashion. So we've got to think out of the box, and that might not be very nice.
With Operation Mincemeat now given a green light, Chumley and Montague need to act fast, as Chumley's idea has gone from being theoretical to a full-blown mission. The first order of business is to find a fresh male body of military age with no obvious injuries or ailments.
The plot ultimately calls for a body at sea, supposedly to have been there through a plane crash. So now you need a body which is going to look at a particular stage of decomposition, consistent with somebody who died in a fairly recent air crash. And that's tricky.
You know, this guy needs to be intact, for want of a better expression, so that we can therefore fake the death, make it look like he's drowned. And that creates problems.
In times of war, scruples are somewhat useless because the aim of the people who are waging the war is to win it. And when we're speaking about a war with Hitler and his Nazis, we're speaking about an enemy who would not stop at anything. And so I think scruples were entirely unnecessary.
On January 28, 1943, Coroner Bentley Purchase alerts Ewan Montague about a potential candidate for Operation Mincemeat in the St. Pancras Hospital morgue.
When you are alerted by the coroner, hey, we've got the guy for you, you are onto it pretty damn quickly. There's another reason, of course, why you've got to be onto it pretty damn quickly, because dead bodies deteriorate, and they deteriorate at the rate of knots, and we need our man floating in the sea to look like he's recently been drowned.
The body is identified as Glender Michael, a homeless Welshman whose body was found in an abandoned warehouse 2 days earlier. Cause of death is believed to be suicide by rat poison.
If this person died a certain way that doesn't coincide with how we want the body to be presented as dying, then it's not going to work.
The toxicology report performed by Purchase suggests that the rat poison will not be detected in a body that was in the water. To be sure the body won't betray the mission, Montague consults with Sir Bernard Spilsbury, a world-leading forensic pathologist at that time. Spilsbury took a look at the body of Glender Michael and confirms this is a good selection. But it's not all good news. He tells Montague that a body that is drowned will have telltale signs. Fine white froth would be found in the lungs and on the lips, water in the stomach, and foreign material like sand and vomit in the lungs, hemorrhages in the ear. This body has none of those markings, making this mission a risk.
And this was one of the biggest ways that the whole procedure may have failed. If you go through the autopsy, you could clearly tell that the body didn't drown. Then the rest of the story, like a house of cards, falls apart.
But time is against them, so Chumley and Montague take the risk.
Purchase cautions them that you're going to have to use the body quickly because, of course, decomposition sets in, and so they decide to keep the body on ice, and that buys them time.
You got to work with what you've got. That's war. It's all about compromise.
On February 4th, 1943, 1 week after the death of Glender Michael, Chumley and Montague present a draft of Operation Mincemeat to the 20 Committee, which passes.
What's at stake is massive, and that's where I can imagine if I was a senior commander hearing these two relatively unknown guys come up with a plan of this nature, I'd probably be hesitant too, because there's nothing short of the invasion plans of Southern Europe on the table.
The big guns have put their cross, their name, by this operation. That immediately, incidentally, raises the stakes. This isn't just some little hobby that a couple of eccentrics are having a go with in the double-cross committee. No, by now, there's big guns engaged in this idea, and it needs to succeed.
With official approval of their Trojan horse, Chumley and Montague have to change the story and character of Glender Michael.
Because the Germans are so thorough, you have to create a life from birth to death. So you have to think about, where was this person born? What was his family like? Did he have siblings? Who were his parents? What did his parents do for a living? You have to create this very elaborate life story for this person and create enough crumbs that the Germans are going to find that it is believable and it seems like a legitimate person.
Chumley and Montague decide to make their Trojan horse a member of the Royal Marines, since Operation Mincemeat originated in the Naval Military Operations Department. Naval officers always wear their uniforms when they travel and carry ID cards. This means that he needs to be outfitted properly, and a legitimate-looking ID card must be fabricated. But first things first, he needs a new name.
They are conscious of the fact that the Germans may have lists of senior commanders in various British departments, including the Royal Marines, which is ultimately the agency they decide upon. So anticipating that, they can't make up somebody that nobody's ever heard of. They have to take the identity of an existing officer, a real-life guy.
Searching through personnel files, they come across 9 high-ranking Marines with the surname Martin. And after careful research, they choose Major William Norrie Martin. At this time, the real Major Martin is in America, training Army personnel, so he is unlikely to find out what is being done with his name.
He didn't need to know about Operation Mincemeat. If you want to keep a secret, don't tell anyone.
With the real Major Martin across the Atlantic, Glender Michael is confidently renamed.
You can imagine William Martin's shock and surprise to find out that his identity had been usurped by a corpse, but that's the plan.
He's issued ID card number 148228 by the British Admiralty, directed by Louis Mountbatten. In order to cover their tracks, they mark the new identity card as a replacement to justify its fresh appearance.
You know the Germans are going to ask questions. You're covering that.
If they had been sloppy in organizing this person's character, the Nazis would have caught on right away.
To maintain authenticity, the ID card needs a photo, which poses another challenge to Chumley and Montague.
There's no actual photograph of this guy for them to use, and the only time that they could take a photograph of him, he's dead. So that is a very significant logistical problem that you have to overcome.
After a while of staring at their friends and acquaintances for a suitable look-alike, in March of 1943, Ronnie Reed, a former BBC technician and expert, is selected as the man to pose for Major Martin's photo ID card. Montague thinks the resemblance is so strong that they could be twins. In the St. Pancras mortuary, Chumley measures Major Martin to get the right-sized battle dress and boots. He goes to the military tailors to get a full uniform, complete with boots, braces, gaiters, trench coats, badges of rank, and a beret.
You can't have a pristine uniform on the body because then it looks like it's a plant. So this uniform has to be worn around for a while.
Being of similar height and build, Chumley wears Major Martin's uniform every day for 3 months to break it in. Now that Major Martin has an ID card and military garb to look the part, he needs a plausible backstory. Chumley and Montague decide that Major William Martin is the adored son of an upper-middle-class Welsh family, who is brilliant but forgetful. To establish this, Montague approaches Ernest Whitley Jones, the Joint General Manager of Lloyd's Bank, to write an angry letter about an overdraft. The letter is addressed to the Pall Mall Army and Navy Club, Martin's address when in town.
and the material on him was meant to be found and made accessible to the Germans, this person would have to have everything that a person normally has, which is a backstory. And it's the little details of the personal life which balance out the fact that there are clandestine or secret confidential documents with this person.
Chumley and Montague decide Major Martin is engaged to a vivacious woman working in a government office. William had met Pam just 5 weeks earlier and proposed with an expensive diamond ring. His fictional father, John C. Martin, did not approve of the match.
And the story of his life, that's what you're kind of going for, is trying to get people to see him as a person instead of looking too closely as a body or as a ploy. Every detail that was used confirmed an earlier detail, so that you built up this long chain that at this point was almost unbreakable, that everything here should be believed, therefore the papers must be real too.
A receipt for Pam's engagement ring is added to William Martin's wallet, along with a flirtatious photograph. This photograph was actually of Jean Leslie, a 20-year-old working in the War Office to help intercept enemy spies. Love letters from Pam to Bill are also planted in the wallet, written by Jean Leslie's boss, Hester Leggett.
They even put eyelashes in some of the letters that are dropped in there to look like he hasn't opened the letter yet. It's almost like a mad scientist way of doing spycraft. They're building someone up from nothing.
Because of their positions of relative power and intelligence, they can call in on very specific levels of assistance.
To ensure William Martin's backstory is consistent, Chumley carefully gathers supporting items that a wartime officer might carry in his pockets, what could be referred to as wallet litter. Contained within is a booklet of stamps, a pencil stub, keys, a pack of Players Navy-cut cigarettes and matches, and a used 2-penny bus ticket. But there's still the problem that if there's a post-mortem, it will clearly show Martin never drowned. But Montague and Chumley have a plan to hopefully prevent a full autopsy from happening.
So they made Major Martin a Catholic and put a cross on the body. So when it was discovered to respect the Catholic faith, they didn't do the type of intensive autopsy that they otherwise would have.
With Major Martin's personality fleshed out, it is time to develop his role in military operations. It is decided that Martin is a courier, carrying an attaché containing confidential personal letters between high-ranking Allied officials. Building on the Allied Army's success in North Africa, it is decided that the first fake letter from Major Martin's briefcase will be sent from General Sir Archibald Nye in Britain to General Sir Harold Alexander in Tunisia. These two generals are privy to highly classified battle plans, and the Germans will know who they are. For authenticity's sake, General Nye drafts the letter himself.
If you're the British, there's a very high probability that the Germans have seen letters written by General Nye before. So they know how he writes. They know the voice he uses. So it's a really smart decision to have him write the letter himself so that whatever those little unconscious tendencies that you have when you're writing come through.
The letter indicates there are 2 assaults planned: the bombing of airfields in Sardinia, codename Operation Brimstone, and an Allied invasion of Greece, Operation Husky. In fact, Brimstone only existed on paper, and Operation Husky's true objective was the island of Sicily. The hope is that if Germans find anything else called Husky, they'll believe it is about an attack on Greece.
Nobody other than a very small group knew all the details or would see how all the pieces fit together. And you'd only do that if you're really afraid that there were double agents or German spies that had infiltrated British command.
Information about military attacks is typically shared over wireless, using coded messages. But for Operation Mincemeat to work, the body needs to have written documents planted on it for the enemy to discover. To dispel any questions about why a courier is carrying such confidential information about upcoming military attacks, the letters in Major Martin's briefcase need to be considered personal, written with just enough informality.
It has to be believable for the Nazis to respond to it. Everything has to look right. If something is off, then the whole mission fails.
With Major Martin's meticulous backstory and falsified military plans complete, Chumley and Montague now need to choose the best spot to drop the body, where it is sure to land in the right hands and make its way up to Hitler in Germany. British intelligence decide on neutral Spain, where the country was led by right-wing dictator General Franco.
Spain depended on the United States and to some extent did not want to anger the United Kingdom. So it was ostensibly neutral. Franco's neutrality cannot be really taken at face value because we know that the Nazis and Mussolini fought on Franco's side during the Spanish Civil War. So we know that Franco was a sympathizer to a limited extent with what was going on in Germany.
But to pinpoint an exact location, they need someone well connected on the ground.
It's got to be tough. Who do you know who to trust?
Montague and Chumley meet with Don Gomez Bear, a British Navy captain who has a large Spanish network. He advises that the best place to launch a dead body into German hands is Huelva, a fishing port off the Spanish coast. It is home to a large German community where the chief of police is very pro-German, but it has one very important German resident.
They were targeting a very specific member of the German spy network, somebody who was highly trusted, highly ranked, and who had a lot of connections in the area that they're dropping off the body.
This is Adolf Claus, a Nazi spy that's made Huelva his home. Supposedly there under the guise as an agricultural technician, he was an efficient and effective operative for the Abwehr, a German equivalent of Britain's MI5.
If you can convince him that this is a real lucky opportunity, then anything he passes back towards Germany is going to be taken from a trusted source.
In 1943, Claus is running the largest and most efficient spy ring in Spain. If anything of importance washes up near Huelva, Claus will surely hear about it.
The Abwehr was everywhere. I mean, agents were spanning the globe because Germany was very invested in maintaining the support of the nations which had not joined the Allies. They needed some kind of neutral powers where they could collect information about Allied activity, and they would stop at nothing to get what they needed.
After choosing Huelva as the target location, British intelligence decides that rather than being dropped from an airplane, it's best to release the body of Major William Martin into the ocean by submarine.
This body just has to appear. What's a great way to do that along a coastline? Utilize a submarine, because the submarine can be silent, it can come to the surface at night, drop off whatever needs dropped off, and then go back underwater and escape. Because if you're spotted dropping it, it's game over. Everything is for nothing.
At this moment, the HMS Seraph is docked in the port of Greenock, Scotland. This submarine was specifically designed to patrol the restricted waters of the North Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. It is captained by Richard Jewell, who can be relied upon for discretion.
Yeah. You can't underestimate the importance of secrecy. I mean, there's double agents everywhere. And nobody knows that more than Chumley. Why? Because he is an integral part of the Double Cross Committee. It's all about controlling double agents, in some cases triple agents. Who do you trust in war?
But there's a problem. The body of General Martin is in London, and the submarine is in Scotland. So they need to come up with a way to covertly move the body and avoid further decomposition during transportation. However, they know just the man for the job. Charles Fraser Smith is the master of disguising ordinary objects. After working in different positions abroad, he returns to the UK to design clothing, props, and gadgetry for British intelligence. He is Ian Fleming's inspiration for Q, the gadget expert in the James Bond series. Fraser Smith is tasked with creating a canister to transport the body, the world's first underwater corpse transfer.
So how do they keep the body from decomposing? If it's completely decomposed, the Germans wouldn't believe it was real or credible.
And they devise a plan to put this body on dry ice in a large steel container and take the oxygen out of it. So you need oxygen to decompose.
Fraser Smith works with Charles Chumley to draw up blueprints for a tubular canister, 6 feet 6 inches long. One end will be welded closed, and the other has an airtight steel lid and a box wrench is clipped to the lid to make for easy removal. Throughout design and construction, Fraser Smith isn't told what the canister is for, and when requested to add a Mae West life jacket, he's told it's for a floating weather station, though the life jacket makes it clear this isn't the real reason.
Information on a need-to-know basis. The more you know, the more potential you have to compromise the mission.
Secrecy is key, but before the body has left London, there is one more hurdle to be faced and the chance for the operation to be exposed, as all MI5 secret activities need approval from British Parliament before being put into action. On April 13th, 1943, the British Parliament's Chief of Staff Committee gathered to approve the falsified military letters for Operation Mincemeat.
You don't have a lot of time. The Nazis continue to build their fortifications along the coast and even further inland. At some point, it's going to be perhaps impossible to do this.
Churchill needs to give final approval.
Churchill knows that we can't have a conventional war, not until the enemy's been really weakened. So there's got to be thinking out of the box.
April 15th at 10:15, Churchill officially signs off.
Now many people in Parliament know what is going on, and that could be a significant hindrance to the secrecy of this. That's probably one of the most nerve-wracking parts for the intelligence operation.
A few hours later, General Dwight Eisenhower also gives his approval for the operation. After all, it's going to be his troops leading the landing on Sicily, and will need Operation Mincemeat to be a success. With all the necessary approvals in tow, the body of Major Martin is ready for final preparations. After Chumley and Montague dress him, Martin is transferred to Hackney Mortuary, where Fraser Smith's canister is waiting. Next stop is the port of Greenock. But to get the canister there, Chumley and Montague enlist the help of an intelligence officer who was a former racing driver.
To make the story all the more fascinating, the person selected to transport the body is a famous race car driver with the unusual name of Jock Horsfall. And to make that more interesting is he's basically legally blind.
He lives life on the edge, often refusing to wear a helmet or protective clothing, preferring to drive in stylish suits. It is widely speculated that Ian Fleming borrowed many of Horsfall's traits for James Bond. His reputation as a tight-lipped daredevil grabs the attention of British intelligence, who recruit him as a special agent during World War II.
This is a piece of evidence showing how this was a total war, and everybody wanted to get on board and do whatever they could. So being told, you're helping us fight the Nazis doing this, that's an easy sell.
For Operation Mincemeat, he needs to drive 420 miles from London to the Greenock Scottish Naval Yard with a specially constructed canister full of dry ice in tow.
Time is not on our side, and we have thousands of people who want to open up a second front. He's already encased, ready to go, but now we have to understand that this has to get to the dock quickly.
But Operation Mincemeat's importance goes beyond Sicily. At this time on the Eastern Front, Russia's Red Army are fighting Nazis tooth and nail to hold on to the Ukrainian city of Kharkov. In March of 1943, the Red Army loses control of the city to the Nazis and are then pushed back over 160 kilometers. After the Red Army loses this battle, they begin to rebuild their forces to prepare for a major offensive. All Russian males, even male children, are called to fortify the Russian forces.
The Red Army is a massive nightmare for the Nazis.
If the Allies are to be successful on the Eastern Front, it will require Operation Mincemeat to convince Germany to divert forces to Greece.
The more troops that are moving around on the German side, the more that they have to reposition people, the better it is for you as you're making these plans.
Back in London, with time running out, Jock Horsfall knows the perfect vehicle to drive the canister to Greenock, a large 1937 Fordson van that he uses to transport his racing vehicles. On April 19th, 1943, the canister is loaded into Horsfall's Fordson just after midnight. Around 2 a.m., Chumley and Montague buckle up tight as Horsfall races against time.
Pray to the big man you're going to get up to Greenock in one piece, because I'm telling you what, that was not guaranteed with Horsfall at the helm.
Horsfall comes within inches of totaling his 3,400-pound Fordson several times.
At this point, they just want the body to get there.
That morning, after their harrowing ride, Horsfall, Chumley, and Montague arrive at Greenock Dock. Here, the crew of the submarine help them load the canister onto the vessel, but are not told what's in it. On April 19th at 1600 hours, after 3 full months of crafting their fictional character, Chumley and Montague bid the fictional Major Martin goodbye, hoping to fool the Germans against all odds.
Everything is in motion now.
For two people who have controlled every little detail of this has got to be stressful. It's out of your hands. You got to hope for the best, and you hope you get a message back at some point.
The HMS Seraph slips out of the moorings and sails out from the port of Greenock.
They had served off the coast of North Africa. They've been in the Battle of the Atlantic. They know what combat is like. They understand their previous missions and understand the importance of every mission, even though most of the crew don't know what's going on with this canister that's now showed up on board.
On April 30th, the HMS Seraph stealthily approaches the shores of Huelva in southern Spain.
So there are U-boats everywhere. So the decision to launch this body underwater, there's a lot of risk in that.
2 hours later, they reach the drop spot off the Porral Pillar, but where the body should be released are fishing boats. It's a tense wait for them to leave. Once the coast is clear, 3 men on board the Seraph hold the canister up through the torpedo hatch. The body of Major Martin is lifted out of the steel tube.
After a 10-day journey under the ocean, the body is going to be relinquished to the seven seas in the hope that it washes ashore in suitably German sympathetic southwest Spain and is handed on up the food chain, arriving, of course, at German intelligence. But there's lots that could possibly go wrong.
At 4:30, when the HMS Seraph is practically aground, the body is dropped off the coast of Huelva before the submarine disappears out of sight. Now, back in London, Chumley and Montague are nervously waiting for news.
That must have been an excruciating time for them as they waited for word of what happened.
Just a few hours after being jettisoned from the submarine, the body of Major Martin washes ashore. A local fisherman discovers it just 14 kilometers from Huelva.
What's going to happen to the documents? Are they going to end up in the right place or not?
That's the hope, that one cadaver, one extraordinary, cleverly laid trap will reel in a whole shoal of fish for the Allied forces.
Based on the uniform, the fisherman knows this is a man of military importance. The body, along with the chained attaché, are rushed to the morgue cemetery in Huelva. The next day, the autopsy of Major William Martin by Dr. Fernandez is scheduled. Since this was the body of a British soldier, the Spanish authorities contacted Francis Haselden, the British Vice Consul, to oversee the proceedings. Haselden knew that this body was a crucial part of a larger British strategy. Dr. Fernandez goes through the pockets and puts everything on the table beside the locked attaché case. All of the items Chumley and Montague have painstakingly chosen for the fictional Major Martin. Then the briefcase is opened. The contents are soaked, but the writing on the envelopes is still legible. Haselden examines the names and the letters and registers their importance. The Spaniards offered the case and its contents to Haselden, but Haselden declined, requesting that the handover go through formal channels. Possibly a suspicious move on his part, but essential. The letters from the briefcase are then passed on to the Spanish Navy. Though most of Spain is pro-German, the Spanish Navy is actually fairly pro-British, the most out of all of neutral Spain's military divisions. However, the top German spy in Spain, Adolf Claus, has heard about the dead British officer's body being washed up with potentially important documents on him.
People who are working in the spy network are trying to show their worth. And if you provide information that ends up being used, then often there are rewards for you in the system. And then lo and behold, here's some of the best key intelligence. Everybody's going to want to pass it on and want to believe it.
But with the letters in the Navy's possession, it becomes increasingly more challenging for him to get his hands on them, putting Operation Mincemeat in jeopardy.
The Abwehr, of course, is very, very impatient. But the Spaniards have to follow the procedures. They cannot allow it to be seen as if their sovereignty is being challenged by the Germans, or as if they are not in fact neutral, but have some kind of back channel to the Abwehr. That would have exposed that neutrality to be false.
Chumley and Montague's plan to avoid a full autopsy by making Major Martin Catholic has failed, as the Spanish doctor decides to conduct a full one. But Haselden has hung around to try to stop this from happening. Haselden knows a few details about Operation Mincemeat, but understands that the more rigorous the autopsy, the likelihood the doctor will find the real cause of death, which is not drowning. Dr. Fernandez is competent and familiar with drowning, since Huelva is a coastal city. He examines the lungs, which have fluid in them, but he is unsure if this is water. Haselden takes matters into his own hands, saying that the extremely hot day has done enough damage to the body, and he is satisfied with the autopsy. Dr. Fernandez relents and issues the death certificate.
With a typical military operation, you know the results almost in real time of what is happening. With this, you don't. They have a long wait before they know if their plan has been successful. That wait time must have been excruciating.
On May 2nd, 1943, the official military burial for Major William Martin is held. Many esteemed guests attend, including the British Vice Consul Haselden, along with the British Navy Captain Don Gomez-Bear.
So Glyndwr Michael dies twice. A homeless Welshman ends up getting a full military funeral and honors at a burial in Spain as a Royal Marine.
Haselden and Captain Gomez-Bear notice Adolf Claus watching the funeral processions in the shadows.
We know that Adolf Klaus has been tipped off and is across what's going on.
Klaus is very interested in figuring out who this is, what's the importance of these documents, and notifying the proper channels, because that ensures that he has a job, that he stays safe, and that he has status in this system. Someone has taken the bait.
Now that the briefcase is in the hands of the Spanish Navy, London and the British Embassy in Madrid need to become increasingly agitated about the top-secret documents that are inside.
Deception only works if everyone plays their part. If they had shown indifference towards the material found on this deceased major's person, it would have rung alarm bells saying, why are they disinterested? Why are they treating it as if this was a laundry list or just some random memo?
From Huelva, Haselden communicates with the embassy in Madrid. Cables from London are also sent pointing out the urgency of these documents to be returned.
One of the worst things that could happen is if in asking for it back, Spain says, okay, sure, here you go.
The British allow their false retrieval attempts to be intercepted by the Germans, and their fake desperation fools Claus and the Abwehr, who become desperate to get their hands on copies of these letters. 3 days have passed since Major Martin's funeral on May 2nd. Adolf Claus still knows nothing of what those sealed military documents say.
The Abwehr is kind of like this secondary arm of the intelligence wing. They don't get as much funding. They're not seen as being as elite, quote unquote, as the SS intelligence arm is. This is a huge deal. Finding this body, Klaus could put the Abwehr on a different level now by saying, I know where they're going to invade, here's the documents.
With no progress being made, Wilhelm Canaris, the head of the Abwehr headquarters in Berlin, is forced to get involved. He is a well-connected admiral and leans heavily on his Spanish naval connections to access the contents of the letters. This is nearly a full week after Claus learned of their existence, an embarrassing failure for the German agent.
Lo and behold, Klaus is given access to the briefcase. He makes copies of the important documents and sends them up the chain of command.
They are taken so seriously that they are sent to Berlin. You're not going to pick up the phone and call and say, I have intelligence that the Allies are going to invade Greece. That has to be sent straight to Berlin, straight to the intelligence offices.
The letters are passed to Fremde Heere West, also known as the FHW, which is the linchpin of the German military intelligence.
They know almost everything going on the continent. They have spies everywhere. They have informants. The Gestapo is working overtime to try to find out counterinsurgency plots, enemies of the state. They're locking down Europe. It is going to be hard to break through and fool them into thinking that this is what's going to happen.
There is a high level of paranoia in the German state. In any dictatorial society, you are second-guessing yourself, because you put a step wrong, it's game over.
Based on the letter's contents, it determines they have 2 to 3 weeks to reinforce the Greek coast before the Allies attack.
It has to be fully trusted before it gets to Hitler. And at any point along that chain, if somebody doesn't believe in it, then the whole mission fails.
There's a lot of anxiety on the British side. What's happened to the intelligence? Do they believe it?
The decision is made. Hitler is to receive this intel. Operation Mincemeat has made its way to the top German commander. On May 12th, the Bletchley Park offices in London intercept a German message. It states an enemy invasion on a large scale is projected in the near future in both East and West Mediterranean. But has Germany taken the bait? Or is this an attempt to deceive the Allies?
How do you know the Germans have fallen for this ruse?
It's very possible that if Mincemeat goes wrong, you're going to be walking into a trap. And the trap being, it's always tough to have a landing from the ocean. If you are caught on those beaches, you're going to have high casualties, and then it's really hard to get out of there.
If the Germans figure this out, it is mass casualties for thousands and thousands of Allied soldiers.
Finally, Chumley and Montague receive a crucial update on the outcome of their deception plan.
With Chumley and Montague's letter in hand, Hitler issues a decree, and 90,000 German soldiers are sent to Greece to dig in at great expense, with fortifications constructed to prepare for the Allied invasion of Greece, which doesn't happen.
But once Hitler has said yes, there was no one in the entire National Socialist military establishment who was going to question him.
That's the golden prize, because that means that they've bought the deception plan.
At Bletchley Park, they intercept plenty of German communiques, giving them a clear-cut idea of what German defenses look like in Sicily. The coast will be armed with 300,000 troops defending 600 miles of coastline. More than two-thirds are Italians who are poorly trained and ill-equipped for this attack.
Many of the troops in Sicily, their heart is not in the effort anymore, and that will show when the Allies do invade.
Then on July 9th, 1943, the Allies launch Operation Husky, an attack on Sicily. This is the culmination of all their efforts from Operation Mincemeat. 2 American and 2 British airborne troops carry out attacks just after midnight. In the early hours of July 10th, the amphibious assault begins their landings, spread along 105 miles of the southern and eastern coasts of the island. British and Canadian forces are in the east, and Americans are towards the west.
It's a smash and grab. Within 6 weeks or so, we are now the occupying force, and we've got the perfect landing stage via which to launch into that so-called soft underbelly, in fact, very tough gut that is Italy. And it's very important that that initial operation into Sicily isn't too costly, because the Italian war is.
The attack opens up the Mediterranean sea lanes for Allied forces.
Think of how many lives are saved by that movement from the Allied side. If 90,000 or 100,000 Germans had been left on the Italian frontier, it would have been a bog of epic proportions.
Although having been caught out, on August 6, 1943, German troops pour into Italy to shut down any possibility of a peace treaty. But all that extra manpower means they have to loosen their grip on the Eastern Front, and they begin to withdraw from Russia and Ukraine.
If you're being attacked so hard by the Soviets on one side, and now you're being pushed hard from Sicily, you have a two-front war, and this pincer movement is starting to push in. And that means that you can't move troops from the Eastern Front to Italy, and vice versa, because they're both necessary and needed to keep the operation going. So you can't utilize your interior lines anymore, and this causes a major problem for Nazi Germany.
With the Nazi troops withdrawing from the Eastern Front, the Red Army now has the numbers to move to a crucial offensive.
It's not looking pretty for Germany. You've got the Americans who've come into the war on the Western Front, and you've got the extraordinary capacity of Russia to absorb German firepower that had not been anticipated.
Back on the Western Front, on July 25, 1943, Benito Mussolini is arrested. Less than 2 weeks later, Italy indicates there may be potential to sign a peace treaty.
Fascist Italy falls in a very short amount of time. So now the Germans have another worry. Now their ally to the south is knocked out of the war.
On September 8th, the surrender of Italy to the Allies is announced by General Eisenhower, and then by the Italian government and the Badoglio Proclamation. Operation Husky is a success. If Operation Mincemeat hadn't convinced the Germans to pull troops from Sicily, the Allies may never have captured it. On the Eastern Front, Operation Mincemeat's success gives Russia an upper hand on German forces.
Without as many German troops on the Eastern Front, it allows the Red Army to march in and make progress towards moving toward Germany.
On August 23rd, the Russians win the Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle in history. This marks the decisive end of German offensives on the Eastern Front, paving the way for the massive Soviet offensives in 1944 and 1945 that will end in Berlin's capture and the Nazis' defeat.
Everyone was driven by a sense of desperation to end the war, and Operation Mincemeat certainly expedited the German defeat.
What I still can't get my brain around is that MI5 allowed these two young 20-somethings, Chumley and Montague, to just run with this seemingly farcical idea of planting evidence on a dead body, and they were given free rein to run with this mission, and it ended up working.
War is fought on the ground, certainly, but it is also fought at home. It's fought in intelligence. It's fought in the mind.
And what Operation Mincemeat is, it's an example of being given the space to think outside the box, being given the freedom to come up with a solution that's literally going to outsmart your enemy. And in the end, bring this god-awful conflict to a quicker finish.
Both Chumley and Montague were given honors for their part in the successful mission, but they weren't the only ones. In 1998, a new inscription was added to the gravestone of General William Martin, recognizing the part that Glender Michael had played in Operation Mincemeat, a man who helped change the course of World War II, and in his death, saved the lives of thousands more.